was doing a podcast in Arizona, or not Arizona, San Diego. I was just out there, and the guy had these, and we were outside, and there was like people walking and stuff. And then when you listen to the podcast,
Couldn't
you
hear him.
shit.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it's essentially like a boom mic, but it's
Yeah.
just pointed right at your
yeah,
mouth. So
they lowered the price on these two. Thankfully, because I had to get two more because it was funny because. So I got it because you remember my old mixer's up there. It just had two mic things, remember? So on this one, I got one that had four, but it still only has one headphone jack. So I bought two splitters and three splitters. I put two splitters into a splitter just to get all the headphones going. And it works.
dude, I would have called Travis and been like, yo, help me out, fam.
Yeah.
I can't.
Oh, I did.
When it comes to this. Oh, okay.
He just sends me links and I just click order.
Dude, I would have tried to figure that out and passed out for sure.
Oh, I mean, you remember how it was?
overload.
We used to just, when Michael was helping us, we would just walk up to the podcast and
Yep.
just start talking.
Yeah.
Because we don't do any of the other stuff. And it was funny because, actually, speaking of that, somebody commented on, so we started putting the podcast episodes on YouTube, and somebody commented literally the day after you and I were like, okay, Thursday this time, she goes, will you please have Theo back on the podcast?
Really?
Like for an episode? I'm an OG listener,
That's
and
funny.
like I miss those days, and I was like, damn.
That's what's up. I miss podcasting, man. I haven't really done it. I mean, I've been guest on it, but like, you know, as far as being regular and
Yeah.
and you know, doing it like we were doing, I fucking miss it. So
Well, shit, now that you live pretty fucking close,
yeah,
come through more.
absolutely.
We got a place to do it. And to me, it's one of the most fun forms of content because it's just like it's the most raw form.
Right.
Like I think there's a lot of fake people on Instagram, and I think that comes to no surprise. But it's really easy to type something up and to like curate information from other places. And granted, I do that too. Like I'll make a post talking about several topics, and I curate from different researchers or coaches that I follow, and I create my own take on it. But to be able to sit and talk and articulate something in your own voice, I think like says a lot about a coach and the knowledge they have versus just being able to type something up.
Right.
Because I can edit that as many
More
times
or
as I
less copying, pasting, which
Exactly.
is
That's what I'm saying.
a lot of, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I feel it.
But no, I love the podcasting, man. It's cool too because we talked about this yesterday on an episode we recorded about like the journey of my business, and one of the things I brought up was podcasting, and I used this as an example at the event I was speaking at. Was like we started it as Facebook Live Q&As in the garage of me and Travis's place in Renton, and then somebody commented and was like, "You two should have a podcast," and we were just like,
Yeah.
"Okay."
Yeah.
And we just
well,
did
that
it.
was, I think that was, I mean, podcasts were listened to, you know, Rogan had his, but that people were still calling it radio, you know, saying that, you know, you guys should have your own radio show.
Yeah.
And they're like, shit, you know, well, we both listen to podcasts. Let's start a podcast. And yeah, that was, and that wasn't even on my radar. So it's funny how things like that sort of just happen. Yeah. Because, you know, you were doing Facebook Lives and, you know, you were just trying to, you know, give I really like your following, you know, a little bit more value. And then it was like, man, you know, like, could you help me out? You know, come out and you know, we can just kind of shoot the shit and talk fitness. And then from there, it would just, you know, it kind of evolved. And it was that's what I think that I was really excited about too at that time was like, man, like, you know, this is a really great way to reach not just the people who you coach and who you train but like just other people, because then you start seeing people tag and share it and like, man, like I never thought of these concepts this way. And then the entertainment aspect of it too. Like, I think that's why, you know, a lot of people love watching podcasts and not just listening to them, but watching them on YouTube, you know, is because it provides some entertainment. There's a face to the voice and, you know, people can engage with it more. So, it's just, I would say that if somebody isn't doing it, and something that I've really, really been considering getting back into as well. But I would say that if somebody's not doing it, you know, just to jump into it. It's one of those things I think that a lot of people hold themselves back from doing anything because they're like, man, like, what's my niche? I don't, you know, I really don't have a niche. The thing with podcasts is you can literally just get on.
If you have a personality in any way,
Right.
or if you're likable.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think podcasting makes you more likable
Right.
because it gives you a chance to start like kind of finding your voice and finding your personality. But I remember when we first started thinking like, fuck, these dudes they have huge podcasts. Like, what are we doing stepping in the game? And I think that's what a lot of people go through is like, why would I do a podcast? These podcasts are huge.
Imposter syndrome.
Yeah, but it's like, who cares? Like, just do it, because we were just doing it just to provide value anyway. So we were like, fuck it, man. I even remember the conversation being like, worst case scenario, our clients listen to it.
Yeah.
And at least they learn more.
Yeah.
And we'll retain our clients better.
Right.
Because they'll be happy and they'll be learning. So it's like, whatever.
Yeah.
And then that just kind of catapulted.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. People still bring up old episodes too, like even just, you know, my own clients, you know, talking about different episodes and specifically like when it comes to like mushrooms and shit like that. You know, people still bring that up.
That's my mom every time podcasting gets brought up. She's like, I hope you're not talking about stories about mushrooms and stuff like that. And I'm like,
hey,
yeah, that was Theo.
I'm still a big fan. I'll let everybody else know.
I was like, that was not me.
In case you guys forgot, I'm still a big fan.
That was hilarious. But I think that's like the good, like, and I try to explain it. And it's funny because like even my grandma, I was trying to explain to her and I was like, it's a radio show. And I can picture her in her head thinking of what a radio show looks like. And I was like, it's not, but it is. But that's the only way that they get it. But like trying to explain to like that generation, or even just like my parents, of like being raw and authentic is okay.
Yep.
Like I've even had people like respectfully ask me to curse less because their kids are in the car. I'm like, I said it on the podcast today. I was like, I totally get it because I'm really working on that around my daughter. But I also can't like filter myself from being real, and sometimes shit just comes out. Yeah, literally. I mean, but I think that's the power of podcasting, is that it is so authentic, it's so real, and I think like that was one of the coolest things about like when we first started was just, and not enough people do this, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, but like kind of being a student of the game. And like there's a lot of times where I'm like not motivated to train, or like I even think about like, man, I'm still doing the same thing I've been doing for the last decade almost, like just training and coaching people and training and coaching people and just reading and studying. Like it's the same shit. But every time I get that like that feeling in my head of like staleness or anything, I literally think back of like when we were going to school, when you were training with me, and then we were training in the gym, and then we would have those late night sessions. Like I literally think about those old times of being like, man, I just love fitness and I love nutrition. I love this game, that the money doesn't even matter, and it's just being able to provide value and sharing my story. And that's how it all started for me too, is like the blog, even our podcast. It was literally just about like, let's just share what we're doing. Because when we started podcast, online coaching wasn't really a big thing. It was just kind of like, let's just do this, dude, and see what happens. Right. You know what I mean?
Right. I think that, and I totally get it, because, you know, I kind of go through these ups and downs as I'm sure everybody does, right? It's just, you know, human nature. But when you just were talking about that, I thought about the text that you sent me yesterday, right? And how I was like, man, like, you know, just because we only have so much time, so how do we want to use that time? Do you want to train here? So, and at first I was like, you know what, like I can kind of go either way. But then I was like, man, like, where did it all start for us? Yeah. Right. It was training. And so I was like, man, like, let's take it back to where it started. Right. Let's definitely get a training session in.
That was funny because I saw all the texts at once, but then because I came back to my phone, but when I like swiped over to see the times, you could tell it was like a few minutes later, like you thought about it and you were like, no, fuck that. Let's train.
Yeah. So I think that, you know, and there's always a time for, you know, self-reflection, and I know that kind of gets beat in the head nowadays, but for a good reason. So, you know, when you do feel when you do feel like that, or for me, anyway, you know, I try to think about like, okay, you know, try to run through those emotions and thoughts of, you know, why am I feeling that way? You know, and like at first I'm like, man, like I shouldn't be feeling like, of course you should. Like that's just, again, that's part of being human. It's just, you know, how you deal with different things, and there might be different triggers, and that's why it's important to extract that information and then have something to, you know, almost like a protocol to where, you know, you have that in your repertoire to be able to be like, okay, you know what, You know, and a lot of what gets thrown around now is auto regulation. And that's a perfect opportunity, right? To auto regulate, right? Maybe you just don't have it in you to go 100% in that training session. And that's why your body or your mind is telling you, right? Hey, maybe we need to back off a little bit today. You know what I'm saying? So there's and that's not the only reason, right? There's so many different variables to it, but that's kind of how I approach things. I almost feel like that is the most important, essential tool that a coach can have these days, is the ability to auto-regulate, not only for themselves, but for their clients too, right? And you know, because I have people come in all the time like, man, I'm just not feeling it today. You know, yesterday Steph came in after work, and she has like an hour, since we moved, she has like an hour or 15 commute, right? And a lot of that is just stop and go, stop and go, stop and go. So
where's their office?
In Factoria.
Oh shit.
So that's 30 minutes just to get from Renton to Factoria, you know? So for her, like mentally, she's just fatigued, and she's in oral surgery. So it's like, you know, she's got that stress of working with, you know, working with people in that realm. And then, you know, to come to the gym and get our daughter, you know, she's mentally spent, and she was about to sleep on the couch with a bunch of, you know, a gym full of people. And then she got up and she like did some swings, she did some push-ups and some other stuff. And I was just like, hey, just keep it explosive and just keep it short, like 20 minutes. Yeah. And then, you know, see how you feel. And she was like, man, I feel a lot better. So it's just little things like that, right? And especially in a major metropolitan city like Seattle or the greater Seattle area, where you have people who are literally working and then going home and going to sleep, and then that's it. You know, maybe a little gym time. Yeah, a little gym time. They're going to be going through that same stuff, right? So, and I won't name any names, but, you know, we both collaborate on working with, you know, a specific client who literally has not put sleep as a priority. And one of the 90-day outcomes that we set for this individual was, hey, you're going to get X amount of hours of sleep. Yep. Right. And we're going to do less in the gym, which has been like a 2-year battle of getting that individual to do,
and it's making
to do less
progress better.
Right.
We're watching that happen. And I think that one was funny because I remember sharing with them, is like, it's funny because I just finished my 90-day outcomes and my goal was 7 hours of sleep a night. And on the days I couldn't, I had to make it up. So it was always 49 hours a week. Yep. Dude, I felt night and day difference. Yep. Like literally, like looked leaner, started lifting heavier. I was more productive at work. I first really noticed it when I started getting done with work early. And I would almost feel guilty, like, I got to do something. Right. And it's like, no, you know what? Like, I'm done. Yeah. I'm being fucking productive. Eventually, I filled that time up. But I think that's one of those things where you have to, like, kind of take a step back to take 10 steps forward. But I like the auto-regulation point, too, because that's something, since I've left being right next to you, doing a lot of things, I've used reps in reserve, RPE, auto-regulation of really just life in general with clients, myself, so much. Whereas when we started, there was so much percentage focus. Like it was like, man, the paper says 90% today. Yeah. Like you're lifting 90%. Right. And there was plenty of programs where I remember calling week 3 of a program depression. Yeah. Like just straight up.
Week 3 depression.
Like, you're just smoked. Yeah. Like it's just bad. And realistically, you don't need to go to that point. But, and I'd like to get your take on this, I think that it's important to do that because it teaches you how to auto-regulate. I see a lot of people that talk about auto-regulation or RPE, and they're like, this is a good philosophy. You shouldn't go all the way to failure and stuff. And it's like, you don't even know what failure is like. Right. So you can't tell me how close you are to failure, because the reality is sometimes you do have to get close enough. Yep. But stay far enough away to recover. Yeah. But I think a lot of people don't ever fail. They don't ever max out completely. Like, I remember doing trap bar, deadlift, put your body weight on the bar, as many reps as you could unbroken. Like doing 66 reps in a row and just like falling over. Yeah. It's like, it's not good for you. Yeah. But the knowledge you obtain with that, the experience, and just the grit, I think, of just being able to grind through those reps, I think teaches you so much for future programming. Yeah, I agree. And, you know, as far as maxes go too, you know, like I rarely have anybody
go to, and it's like once a year.
Yeah, like a 1 rep.
Yeah, like a 1 or even a
Sometimes
3
never.
rep. Yeah. So it really depends on the individual as well, right? If I know somebody, if I know somebody is not there as far as form, right? Like even just on that first rep on the setup, right? Like they're just not getting it. We have to spend more time doing that. And I'm not worried about how much they're lifting, right? Like I know that the human body is capable of lifting more weight than that individual is currently doing.
Yeah.
I know that, but I'm not going to compromise. I'm not going to compromise form and risk this individual, getting severely injured, right? And truth be told, that can happen. So, and for me personally, in the last, I'd say almost 2 years, I don't have an exact date of when, I started doing it, but like I don't even deadlift from the floor anymore, right? Like the last time I did was probably a year ago, and it was at 60% for speed. So
It's funny. I don't think I have either.
So like it's just not worth it.
But I think that's like something a lot of people have like an ego, and like I literally had a conversation with this with a client a few weeks back because they were like frustrated that every time they pull, I'm like, why aren't you just pulling off plates?
Right.
Well, that's not a true deadlift, and it's like, what? Yeah, it is.
Says who? Yeah.
And especially because this individual is tall, so I was like, I pull off plates.
Yep.
You got 3 inches on me, man.
Yeah.
Like your femurs are way longer.
Right.
You should be pulling off blocks. Like it makes way more sense.
Right.
But
yeah.
I think that ego gets in the way.
Yeah, and for some it's an ideology too. And anytime that you attack that, they're automatically offended, right? Like I'm sure that people are gonna be offended from what we're just talking about right now. Is not pulling from the floor. So, at some point, you gotta weigh. Like, is there that much of a difference from pulling from the floor than pulling from maybe a 2-inch elevation or 3-inch elevation, wherever you're at? Like, look, you're still lifting the same amount of weight. You're probably in a better position and you're more efficient, and you're not in as much pain. So
still the same movement pattern too.
Still the same movement pattern, yeah. And so, and if you want to measure angles and go as deep as doing that, go ahead, knock yourself out. But at the same time, man, like, we gotta realize that I think that the reason that we all train, or the reason that we should be training, is so that we can move better, be stronger, and do that longer, right? Is that longevity aspect. So if we're just like, if we have these empty goals of, man, I just want to get to a 315-pound deadlift, right? It's like, man, we gotta dig a little bit deeper than that, and then find out how we're gonna get there.
When did you have that moment of like, because I know for like there was a long period of time where, and like I think of like some of this, I don't regret it because it taught us a lot, but we did a lot of stupid shit in the gym.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of really great coaches that went through periods of time of just doing things wrong or doing things too aggressively or just ignoring biofeedback and the signals of your body. But I think it teaches you a lot. But there's a certain point in time where people kind of shift. And I've kind of gone in waves. Like I had a big shift where I started focusing more on longevity and like, okay, like I want to look good, but like, how do I feel? Right. And then I got back to like my old ways of being too aggressive, and then it like beat me up a little bit. And it was actually happened again when I had surgery in February of last year. That's when it like clicked with me again of like, dude, I need to like rethink everything.
Right.
Like, what am I doing? And now like I get more, and this is actually a really good point on the form tip that you said. Like a lot of people are so focused on load on the bar and volume that it's all junk volume. Like it's not quality reps. So you're not getting the most out of it. And I would have somebody consider that if you put 300 pounds in the bar with shitty form, what if you could put 200 pounds and get just as much value from a muscular perspective? Like a movement efficiency and like a hypertrophy perspective. Are you lifting as much? Does it increase your 1 rep max as much? Maybe, maybe not, but you're not aching. Your recovery's better. Your nervous system's not as fatigued, and you're going to be able to do it longer. And I think for me, like after that surgery, man, I started really like paying attention to like even filming my squats, filming my deadlifts, filming everything and looking at everything and being like, how does this look? Like, and what would I tell a client if they were doing this? And most time it was like, I would tell them to go lighter. And I would tell them to be more efficient. And I started working on that, and I feel so much better, dude. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah. So even just, I mean, from the time that I start training, I lace up my shoes, everything is everything is different. How I prep for a specific movement. And a lot of it has to do with motor control, man. And this is where I think that, I've learned a lot from, just past experiences like you talked about, instead of just jumping right into a training session and doing like explosive jumps and using that as a primer.
Yeah.
You're not going to get away with that for too long. And
what are you priming for that? You know
right.
what I mean?
Exactly. So, and I had a back injury too, man. And that's a shitty thing to go through. And then you have to, develop new patterns, or I should say you have to start back at square one to develop that pattern over again. Right. Yeah. So for me, it's like, all right, when I think about it that way, building on that foundation is never a bad idea. So if I'm prepping for a squat, if I'm prepping for a heavy squat, in my movements, I might go, I'll pick 4 to 5 exercises, and I'll just run through like maybe 3 to 4 times, and I'll just start like with body weight, and then I'll go kettlebell squat, and then every time I go through, I'll ramp up the weight in the kettlebell squat, and then I'll add in different fillers. Okay, what do I need? So I know I'm back squatting, right? I need some thoracic extension. Okay, so I'm limited there. So let's prep that as well. So I'll throw those into the mix, and then I'll just run through it. So my nervous system is getting prepped. Sometimes I'll move from, a 52-pound kettlebell to then going explosive squat jumps, and prepping that way. So it's not just like because I have kettlebell squat there, that doesn't mean that that's the only thing that I'm going to do, right? I might do a kickstand rock back to hit the adductors. I might do dead bugs, right, to prime the hip flexors and help with stability of the hips and the trunk. And then, I might add in an explosive jump in the next round. And then by the time I get to that squat, right, I'm ready to go, right? Everything is loose, right? My body knows what it's about to do. So when I get under the bar, I feel so much better.
Yeah.
And the major difference for me is that when I do that, I notice that even if I do, right, because there's always going to be, whenever you're underneath a barbell, there's always going to be room for error, right? Because you're essentially in a fixed position. It's not like a kettlebell or dumbbells or anything like that to where you can manipulate, your position a little bit more, right? So sometimes things happen, right? And you might feel a little bit something in your lower back. And so, but what I notice is that if I don't prep, if I just kind of try to speed through it, that inflammation is going to stick around for me longer, right? And that just comes with age. And by no means am I saying that I'm an old individual, right? I'm only 30 years old, but at the same time, that inflammation wouldn't have stuck around as long as when we were training, 5 years ago. That shit would have been gone in like a week, right? Like if it's if you really kind of messed up, it's going to stick around for a week, right?
Yeah.
But now it's like, man, like even if it's just like a little tweak, it might linger around for 7 to 10 days, not debilitating, but you might feel it when you do certain things, right? So just it for me, it's that's the big change is that, man, like, how are you going to prevent that? Yeah. Right? These are the things that you can do. And just, a ton of different stuff, man. I implemented a mobility class at Vigor, and it continues to grow. It seems like every week, and constantly I have more people who come to me after a training session and be like, man, this has drastically improved the way that I'm training, the way that I feel. The inflammation in my joints is like, man, this dude just the other day on Monday was talking about he did something to his knee playing basketball, and he was like, man, that was years ago. He's like, man, I used to be in shape, blah blah blah, and he was like, man, I just haven't been able to to kind of get back in shape. And he's like, my knee's been bugging me. And he's like, man, since I've been coming to the classes on a regular basis, he's like, dude, like, I feel stable. Like I can do, like, I have no problem doing a lunge or walking upstairs or anything. So it's just little things like that kind of create that compound effect. So, and so that's the big difference is how I've approached things and sort of the systems that I put into place, and not just for my clients, but kind of walking the walk for myself as well.
I like that last word you said, systems, because one of the things I was going to point out is tracking and knowing what's going on creates awareness. And that's the only way you're going to know if there is inflammation, if you don't feel good after a session, if that's what's making you feel fatigued, if you're training too hard, if you're not training hard enough. So like constantly seeking out feedback. You talked about reflection at the very beginning. Like if you're not constantly reflecting, and I think that's the power of having a coach or having a trainer, is that you can actually constantly reflect. Because I even remember for me, like when we had Blakely, it was like a period of time where business was picking up more than ever, and I just had a daughter. And I literally, and you're going to laugh at this because you know the exact program. I literally started, you remember it was either
Built for Bad.
Yeah. I started that literally at that point in time. And I think it was like a very early midlife crisis of like, fuck that. Like, I'll push through. That program, you're doing 5 days a week, full body of like all 85 to 95%. Like literally in the 1 to 5, like the most neurologically draining program. But it popped up on like T Nation's homepage. And I was like, man, I remember that program. I got such great results on that. Forgot that I was 19 years old, had no responsibilities, slept 9 hours a night, like totally different situation. And I literally was like in a state of depression after a few weeks. And I'm like, I have a beautiful daughter, successful business. I'm happy. Like, why do I feel so shitty every single day?
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, it's just training. It has to be like, I'm just going way too fucking hard.
Right.
So I shifted gears and I felt dramatically better. But if you don't have awareness, understand these things, you'll never pick up and be able to improve them or do the right things. And now I know like how much I can push my limits of like the neurologically taxing stuff. And there's no RPE in that in that program. No. It's like just go out.
Yeah.
But one thing I was going to ask you about this whole topic is like, how do you make that exciting for clients? Like the fact that you have a jam-packed mobility class is like so fucking cool because there's so many people that won't commit the time to it, including myself. One, I remember doing it with you in person. It's a lot easier because it's more engaging.
Right.
So it is more difficult when you're just doing it on your own. But how do you like switch things up and get people into it and make them understand the importance of this? Because the fact that you're convincing so many people to slow down, lower the weight, focus on form, granted, they're all getting better results because of it. So obviously it works. But like the buy-in is the hardest part of that.
The buy-in is hard. So I've been doing it for a while. At first, there was a decent amount of people. I would say like, the first week I probably had like, so I do a Monday and a Wednesday.
It used to be just once a week though.
Yeah. So actually, you're right. So it used to just be once a week. And there would be like, so I'd say the first couple classes, anywhere from like 10 to like 15 people. And then after that, like it was like on a regular basis, I'd get like 2 to 3 people, my clients.
Yeah.
Right. Like nobody else, just my clients.
Like you're like, you have to come to this.
Right. And then it was like, there was a few different variables, just other coaches kind of just sharing it on their story and just even them learning because they're like, man, like what the fuck is that? Right. And then like, what are they doing? And then, they share it. And then, other people are like asking me about it. And then I talk to them and be like, man, this is why we're doing these things. This is how I actually program that as well. So it's not like, how team trainings, and how we run it is, every day is a different program, right? So with my mobility class, I do it in 4 weeks. So we're doing the same 2 days for 4 weeks. And then from there, then we switch it up. But then, I'm also coaching them through how to progress, right? Like how to regress, how to ramp up intensity and stuff like that. So a lot of it is education based, but more of it is I think the message that I kind of promote, and it's almost subliminally, right? Because, I like to talk about and make it relevant so people can relate to it, as well as like, like, hey man, you guys are only here a few hours a week.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I want this training session or these exercises to enhance the experience for the rest of your life, right? Whether, your thing is work, if you actually really love going to work every day and like not doing anything else, or, going on vacations, traveling with your family, playing extracurricular sports, right?
You're fucking sleeping and walking.
Yeah, exactly.
Sitting.
Right. And that's literally been some of the feedback that I've gotten. Like, I can walk down steps without my back hurting and without going sideways. Right.
Yeah.
So again, like when I put it to people like that, I think that, it's, it kind of slowly, there's, I plant the seed and I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. Like, I just want to be stronger and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Right. And then they really start noticing the difference. Like, wow, like I'm waking up and I'm not in pain.
Yeah.
Right. I'm deadlifting and I'm not in pain. I'm squatting and I'm not in pain. Right. I'm jumping and I'm not in pain. So then it's like, okay, there's something to it. Yeah. So then slowly starts to come up and people ask me, hey, can I bring my friend? They got this going on. I'm like, hey, sometimes I even have to be like, hey, like I don't know that everybody is going to benefit the same way. Yeah. Right. Because it's not specific to the individual, right? I'm not a doctor. I'm not a physical therapist. This could be an effect of training like this, but at the same time, I'm not going to promise that result. So I just want you to know that, right? So just, and I think people really respect that as well. So I think that it's, there's so many different variables, but, and just how I teach classes, like just watching Martin Rooney so many times and understanding that every time that you're in front of people like that, it becomes a performance. Mm-hmm. So
that was like my biggest takeaway from him ever.
Yeah. And so for me, he's the motivation guy, right? For me, I'm kind of like a clown sometimes. Like, I like to joke around and make people laugh, right? I think that laughing is something that, man, anybody can benefit from. Yeah. So I try to make people laugh during training sessions and stuff like that too. So especially if you come into the gym and I see that you're fucking like, the whole woe is me thing is going on and you're pouting and, your shoulders are forward and you're looking down, I'm going to pick you out and, I'm going to make you laugh. Mm-hmm. So that's just, that's probably part of it as well. So, I mean, there's, I can't pinpoint one, specific thing, but there's a ton of different variables that go into it.
I think a big thing that stands out to me too is just the consistency. Like, I think it's a cool word for everything you're talking about, because with mobility, it is one of those things where like you're doing these movement oriented stuff and it has to be like, hey, like just trust me and be patient and be consistent. And I promise you very soon you're going to be feeling amazing. Right. And then it becomes easier to build muscle, easier to lose fat, easier to get stronger because you feel better, but it takes time. Right. And then the other side of that is I remember you starting that class once a week on Wednesdays at 5 p.m. years ago. Like, I was there. And to see that it's like, it just kept going and growing. It's so cool, because me and Travis were talking about it yesterday in a podcast. Somebody asked a business question of like, how do you stand out in such a crowded industry? And I was like, honestly, don't worry about standing out. Just provide value and just be consistent. Like fall in love with the craft, right? Like, He was talking about, I remember you being my roommate posting all this shit about like online coaching and all these things you did. And I just kind of ignored it. Like, it was like, whatever, like my roommate's doing this shit. 5 years later, you're still just fucking every day the same fucking thing, but just at a better quality. Right. Because you master that craft. And speaking of which, we were talking about the 10,000 hour rule, right? For mastery. And I calculated the hours of, training people in the gym and then studying for the last however many years. And I literally lowballed it because I was like, there was days where I studied for 4 or 5 hours, but I just put 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, and then gym 6 days a week, this many hours and stuff like that. And I was at like 17.5 thousand hours. And it was like, it makes sense. Like, things picked up and I started really seeing the fruits of my labor after that 10,000 hour mark. And it's crazy that that's actually a thing, but dude, I mean, for so many years, we were just in the gym every day, just obsessed with it. And I think that's the secret.
And and to piggyback off that is, it's an old term, but deliberate practice. Mm-hmm. Like 10,000 hours doesn't mean shit unless you're learning the lessons and you're going through the experiences, you're walking the walk. Mm-hmm. You can have a job, you can be a personal trainer, or whatever you want to call yourself in this industry. But if you're not engaged and you're not constantly learning, you're not learning from your own experiences, seeking the education, communicating with your clients, learning from them, learning from your own fuck ups, then that 10,000 hours doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
So it's how you approach that 10,000 hours, right?
100%.
So, and I would even say, like, don't even focus on the amount of time, because you just calculated that.
Yeah, I never did before.
Right? So a lot of people now, because how many people on Instagram are talking about 10,000 hours of mastery?
They're counting up to 10,000.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now people are going like, and then they get to a certain point, and you see it all the time, whether you want to or not, but I certainly do, is people will stop after a certain amount of time, because I guarantee, man, it gets debilitating when you're like, damn, I've been doing this for a year consistently, 7 days a week, right? Just grinding, and like another 10 years of that.
Yeah.
Like, whoa. Like, no, like people can't even wrap their head around it, because they're thinking so short term that it's like, man, I need this immediate, effect, man. Like, but they don't see like the little wins too. Like I remember when I first started coaching at Vigor, like I was making like nothing, like I really wasn't making that much money, because it's performance based. Like, I could have easily been like, man, like, I'm going to go try to find somewhere else. Vigor was still an established platform at that point when I started coaching. So, I could have went somewhere else and been like, put that on my resume and maybe worked for a salary and got more money immediately. But man, like nothing beats that grind of being performance based, and I guess it's more so more or less that entrepreneur mindset as well, right?
Yeah.
Like if you have a goal of you want to run a business one day, or you want to build on the business that you're currently running, like you kind of have to have that mindset, right? Like not every day is going to be the same. Shit fluctuates, you know what I'm saying? So
well, you got to fall in love with the process, not the end result.
Exactly.
Right? I think a lot of people are so focused on what's going to come because of it. It's the same thing like being a go-giver. Like you're giving without expectation. You should be enjoying the process without expectation. Like we were training people in learning program design and going to seminars, investing our own time and money, not because we thought it was going to make us money. We were like, this is going to make us better at what we do. This is going to like create that mastery.
Yep.
So like you said, the 10,000 hours are important because that's reps, but it's about the quality of those hours.
Right.
You know what I mean? I wasn't busy counting how many hours I was putting in because I was busy learning and like just grinding and taking in as much information as possible. And I think that's key, man. Like, and here's what I'll ask you is, because I do think like you're a good epitome of like showing like loving the process, because I've never seen a point in time where you've like considered, like neither one of us like considered stopping or doing something else because we just love what we do.
I've considered doing something else in addition to, but yeah.
But like you're not gonna leave fitness, like that's the thing.
Yeah.
So what motivates you, like in general? Like what keeps you just plugging away and doing things? Because I get that question all the time, and like I think it's a really, because I want you to go deeper than this, because I know it's a similar answer for you. My daughter, but it's like, well, of course. But like, what else? Like, what is like the bigger meaning by it? Because there's a lot of people who have kids that aren't motivated. They wake up every morning and they're like, "Fuck, I don't want to do this." It's a hard question to answer.
It is, and I think because it's almost like, I could go on forever, but I would say that it's legitimately the impact that I've had on people, and there's different ways that you can go about that in this industry, right? You're really great at nutrition, and I consider you probably one of the best in the industry. So for me, it's I'm not crazy. I don't go as nearly as deep as you when it comes to nutrition. I'm very basic when it comes to that, right? But for me, it's, and like I talked about before, is being able to give the people a tool, which is their body, right? Kind of allowing them to reclaim that, and seeing the compound effect that has on the rest of their life. And it's not even something that I've never once asked somebody, how has this improved? And I probably should, just from a testimonial standpoint. But my point being is that, you know, when you have that effect on somebody, they naturally come to you and tell you about what's going on in their life.
Yeah.
So it's having those conversations that's like, and man, like I've definitely been through the ebbs and flows of being motivated and you know what I mean? Again, it's just like what we talked about with training. So remembering, and it's almost like when you have that thought, or, you know, for a couple days or a week or whatever, however long, somebody always comes. It's almost like it's like perfect timing. It seems like it, right? Mm-hmm. But you know, somebody will always come and tell you, and that's what I love about the face-to-face coaching thing too, is that, you know, somebody will always come up to you and tell you how much they've been impacted by the training and just from a few hours a week, and you know, how they appreciate how much knowledge that you have obtained over the years and implemented and practiced. And, you know, when they see you doing it yourself, it's powerful, because they're like, okay, you know, I can trust this person. So the feeling that I get from that is like, man, like, you know, you could have easily done something else and not had that much of an impact on people, like something that really, you know, makes a difference in their life. So, and for me, I think that it resonates with me so well, because, you know, I used to be an athlete. I used to be a competitive athlete, like disgustingly competitive, and still to this day, you know, like I hate fucking losing. So if I were to lose the ability to, man, play with my daughter, mm-hmm. or my nieces and nephews, and, you know, if my travel experiences, you know, going to see the world and you know, going on ridiculous hikes. You know, I went on I went hunting this last September, and like put in like 50 miles in 5 days, right?
Damn.
Of just constant elevation gain and decline. So, and I'm just going up and down, up and down. I got 50 pounds on my back and like just beat to shit. But I also had the time of my life. So if I wasn't able to do those things, because my body couldn't keep up, but I had it in my mind that I wanted to do that, like I would be in a fucked up place.
People don't even consider the experiences they can have because they're not ready. You know what I mean? It doesn't even get on their radar, because so they don't comprehend it.
Right. They're just thinking that, man, like this is what I have today, mm-hmm. and, you know, like, man, like I'm not really thinking. And again, it's kind of that short-term thinking, right? But like, man, like I'm thinking about when I'm 60, 70 years old. My dad's 70 years old. I see him all the time. And sometimes it's a struggle for him to get upstairs without a handrail, right? Just because of his knees, and he's had a knee replacement, you know, and he's climbing up there in age. But then you see other 70-year-olds mm-hmm. who can fucking, you know, do triathlons and shit like that.
We were just at, unfortunately, my aunt's funeral up in Port Angeles a few weeks back, and this guy named Olaf, and I can't remember his wife's name. They're from Hungary, and they're like my grandfather's like best friends from back home. And it was my grandfather's daughter that passed away, my mom's dad. And they just got back from a 5-day backpacking trip in the Alps, like, and then came over. And it was like, and my grandpa's 80, so I think they were 79 was the lady, and I think the dude was 82. Like, crazy. And they don't look that old. Yeah. But it just like you said, like they've been just backpacking and doing, like they don't train, but they've been doing some form of physical activity for years.
It's all about how you look at it.
Yeah. Yeah. Training is training, especially the body. The body's stupid. It's just, if you're challenging your movement capacity, you're challenging your muscular system, you're going to adapt. You're going to stay fit and do things. I think, honestly, I really think that awareness is such a valuable, I don't even know if that would be a characteristic or a skill to have, but something people should be practicing, because those clients that do notice those things, it's because that they have two things. They have enthusiasm and awareness. They have enthusiasm of what you're teaching, so they'll accept it. Because we all know those clients that we try to teach and teach and teach, and they just are unaccepting of it because, again, they're so focused on the end result, not the process, that they ignore what they could be taking away from it. But those clients that give you their patience and enthusiasm to learn, those are the clients that have awareness around, man, this is improving in my life. Like I got a raise, and I think I relate it indirectly to training because I feel better. I'm more confident. I'm moving
You have
faster.
to have a different mindset when you train.
Yeah, and that carries over to everything, which is actually this is perfect because this is one of the questions I really wanted to ask you today. It could be one specific thing, it could be three, it could be five, but like the biggest lesson or lessons that training has taught you has nothing to do with training, but like the biggest lessons from training. Because I think like the iron game, if you want to call it, like teaches you so much, man. Like I think the person I am today is because I got into fitness and started training.
Right.
And it teaches you so much about life.
I mean, just based on what we were just talking about, I would have to say that's it, is that training is not, for me, it's not just at first when I got into it, I wanted to be 200 pounds and sub 10% body fat. And I started that goal at 150 pounds and sub 10% body fat, right? I was just a skinny motherfucker. So, for me, I wanted, it was an aesthetic goal, right? Yeah, I wanted to be strong. I knew that I had to be strong in order to get there naturally. And so for me, it was, at first it was that, and then it evolved into, in some ways it was a gift that I got hurt. And then I realized, like, okay, there's different things, that matter, not just being big. So, and that's where, I'll piggyback on what we were just talking about, is like, man, like I want to focus more on longevity. And even though I'm young. So for me, that's been the most valuable lesson, is thinking in the long term and setting long-term goals instead of that short term, and just going for the shining light, or, wherever it might pop up, staying focused on what it is that I really want to do outside of the gym. Right. And having those experiences. So, I would say that's probably, there's so many, other than that, I would just say, resilience. I mean, it's taught me how to be more resilient, and not just in my body, but in my mind when shit hits the fan. Sometimes it feels like the whole world is kind of just coming at you at one time, and that anxiety builds up. But like, sometimes, and you've gone through training sessions. I know for sure that we've gone through training sessions where it's like, man, are we even going to be able to do this?
Yeah.
So,
or you read it on the whiteboard and you're like, come on, bro.
Right. And then when you conquer it,
yeah,
then it's like, man, okay, like I might not do that exact same thing again, but this is how I'm going to go about it. But you've ingrained that in your brain through that experience. So now when you go through other things that might, seem tough, that you're like, okay, well, there's something else at the end, right? Like I'm going to get through it. And when you do, you're like, all right, reflect, take that lesson, right? Extract it and learn from it. And keep pushing forward.
It teaches you so much patience, man. Like patience, commitment, and yeah, just being able to stick with like the same focus. You know what I mean? Because even building muscle, like you came in, you're like, I want to get to this point. It's like it's gonna take you a year.
Yeah,
let's go. Let's do it.
Yeah,
you fucking bench pressed every day.
Yeah, like, I bench press every day.
You bench press so
every day, dude.
But like,
I to the point where people did not believe that I could bench press what I was bench pressing.
Yeah, you got up to like what,
360.
That's crazy.
360 at 205 pounds.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a lot more people out there who can do a lot more. But for me, like, dude, I remember being
arms too. So
I remember being a skinny motherfucker in basketball practice, and in the weight room, and people being like, dude, like making jokes. Like, dude, like we'll go to McDonald's, I'll get you a hamburger, right? Blah blah blah, and like almost died under 95 pounds one time as a freshman. And then I remember seeing my coach who just got done playing overseas, and he was strong. He's a fucking man, and he's benching 315 for like 8, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm gonna do that one day.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, just little things like that, and to actually, I think a big, but it kind of ties into the longevity thing. But And I don't speak about it a lot, especially on my Instagram. I almost never on social media is nutrition, right? But I've learned a lot about nutrition, specifically for myself, because when I was bulking and, you know, and getting to that 200 pounds, like at some points, I mean, I remember like doing a refeed day because you were doing my nutrition at that point.
Krispy Kreme and shit.
Dude, I had ridiculous days, but like my gut health also suffered from that.
Yeah.
So now I've learned to, again, be more aware about what my body likes, what it doesn't like, right?
Yeah.
Just because my stomach might not be bothering me, what are the other indicators, right? Like does your skin break out? Like if I eat eggs, right?
Yeah.
Just as an example, my stomach doesn't kill me every time.
Yeah.
But my skin might break out a little bit.
And that's a sign for inflammation in the body.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
you have to learn about these things. So that's been another valuable lesson because, man, like if your gut health isn't in check and you're constantly, in inflammation, or excessive inflammation, that can be detrimental. Yeah. And that longevity factor is not even gonna be relevant if you continue to ignore that. Right. You can train, you can move phenomenal, right? Like everything could be like you could not be in pain after you train, but if your gut health is fucked and your nutrition isn't on point, and 50% of the time, half the time you're eating bullshit, man, I'm sorry, like you're going nowhere fast.
I think that's like the problem with if it's your macros. It's kind of like junk volume, right? Like we're talking about, you can do a bunch of volume, but if your form is horrible, you're not targeting the right muscle. You're not going to grow. You're just going to be in pain. Yeah. If you have enough calories, you'll grow. But if you're eating shit and your gut's all fucked up, it's not going to help. Like you can get more out of less if you do it the right way. Yeah. But I think like for me, like I definitely agree with the resilient. I think like that's taught me a lot. And I think there's value to doing some stupid shit in the gym because of that. Like I remember sessions of doing like, all right, we got 20 rounds of weighted prowlers on the turf, and you're like, dude, fucking, that's like 2,000 yards. Like, what are we doing? And then you get to 20, and it's like, fuck that, 21, do 21. Fuck that, 22. Michael Jordan, 23. Kobe, 24. And we're just doing them. And like, I remember pulling over the freeway and puking on the way home because I had a long drive home after that shit. Or 20 rep back squats. Like, nobody likes that shit. But sometimes you got to go through that because it teaches you. And I think that resiliency is huge. I also think awareness is massive, man. Like just all the stuff you're saying, like over the years of like tracking what I'm doing in the gym, tracking my nutrition, like seeing how my body changes, seeing how my performance changes, monitoring my sleep has just taught me how important it is to be aware and take note of what is going on so you can actually change it. Yeah. Because even now, like to this day, like I wake up and I rate like what's my motivation today? Like what am I going to do today? Who do I need to lead today? Who am I going to connect with today? And at the end of the day, it's like, how did I feel about, like I have this journal prompt, and it's like basically how clear did I feel on my vision today? Like how aligned with that vision was I? How energetic was I? And you start to notice like the other day I had like 2s and 3s, and I was like, fuck, man. Like I wasn't energetic. I wasn't on fire. I wasn't putting on that performance, as Martin Rooney would say. Mm-hmm. And it makes you realize like, fuck, what do I need to do? Like what happened in my day? How was my sleep the night before? And then you can start tying things together, which is funny because it was the night after Shannon had all the girls over for the Bachelor, and I slept like shit because I could hear them like screaming and chilling downstairs. Got like 5 hours of sleep. Oh, bro, it's like a Bachelor night. Trav's girls over there every time. Monday night, dude, I got a bunch of ladies downstairs. Does Steph watch Bachelor?
Oh, the show. Yeah. I'm tripping. I was like, is there something I don't know about?
You got an interesting relationship, bro.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
No. Does Steph watch Bachelor?
No.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, if you tell her, she'll be coming over too, I guarantee you. Tell her there's wine and cheese boards if she does.
No
she
kidding.
might be in. But yeah, that shit, like, but point being is like I have this weird thing where like, one, I can hear him downstairs, but two, like, whenever I'm like alone in my bed, like I'll wake up and be like, oh yeah, shit, she's downstairs, and like fall back asleep because I like trip out. But if she's there, bro, like we'll go upstairs and go to lay down. She's like, you want to watch TV? I'm like, yeah, lay down. I'm out. Yeah. But if she's not there, I'll stay up. But point being is like, I slept shitty, and then the next day I had poor performance in my life. Yeah. But if it wasn't for me sitting down before I went to bed and looking at my journal and rating these things, I wouldn't have been aware of like, man, sleep is important. And now I value sleep, and I really take care of my sleep. And it's times like these that remind me to keep doing that, because I'll get in the bad habit of being like, fuck it. I'll grind. I don't care. Like
Right.
I'm one of those like 1%ers that is anomaly and can get away with 3 hours and not.
Yeah.
No, I'm not.
Yeah.
Nobody's like that. You just think it is.
Yeah.
So I think that awareness factor is unbelievable. It's taught me so much in my life of everything, man. Just like relationships, friendships, mindset. Like I think if not for aesthetic reasons, like if you're listening to this, you don't have a goal of losing fat or looking better, like, which I do think is valuable because you will have confidence on those things. Do it because like that consistency creates work ethic in your life, and you will be better at everything else you do if you train hard.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah. I love training for the vehicle that it is, not necessarily as the end all be all to, my life, because it's not. And I actually have no problem skipping a training session or going off of the agenda or the program, simply just by if there's something that is more enticing to me as far as like value to my life, like again, like I went hunt, I didn't train for a whole week. So just things like that. Or, if I'm traveling, I don't need to find a place with a squat bar. I've done stuff on the beach. I've done stuff, in my hotel room. So there's so many different ways that, again, for me, it's enhancing the experience of life. And so, and having my daughter really kind of brought that out in me, because I want to be able to, take her places and travel with her. And even now, I just started doing this, is taking her out. I got to switch the days now, but every Friday, to just go hit a different ice cream spot. Right. In this new neighborhood that we're in. So, just bouncing around, hitting new spots. But like, I want to be able to, spend and cherish that time with my family, with my friends, whatever it is that we're doing, man. Like, again, like movement has been my life. So if I was to lose that, I would have a major struggle with identity, right?
Yeah.
So that would, all those things, like, it's not like, life would end, but, you obviously you have to figure out from there. But
quality of life would drop significantly, though.
Exactly. If you can't move. So,
but that's what's wild to me too, is like people, and I even caught myself doing this, like, you like spend a ton of money on a car and premium gas, but you won't invest in like your own gas tank and in your own set of wheels, so to speak. And I think like it's such a cheesy analogy of like, do you treat your car like a Ferrari or a Fiat, or not the
easy
Fiat?
on the Fiat,
I know,
bro.
but no. you remember that video I made for Mind vs. Muscle? It wasn't a Fiat. It was it a Ford Fiesta? Sorry if anybody listening has a Ford Fiesta.
I don't remember.
There was a car that I was comparing to a Ferrari.
I would say fucking Fiat's
a Fiat
shit.
would work because you don't put premium gas in a Fiat, do you?
No, hell no.
Ferrari, you're probably going to put – I don't put premium in my truck either. Right. But point being is like people spend all this money on like material things like that, and they won't invest their time and money into the things that actually is like your vehicle for life. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care how nice your watch is or your car is. Like, if you feel like shit, you move like shit, you look like shit, you act like shit, your energy is shit, you can't go do cool experiences. I mean, even something like the hunting, man. Like, I'm a very fit person. I would be fucking nervous if you were like, yo, come on a backpacking hunting trip that's 50 miles. I'd be like, fuck, okay. Give me 6 months. Like, let me prep. But point being is like, some people it's just like completely out of the picture. You know what I mean?
But I kind of trained for that because I knew that it was going to be. Yeah. I knew that it was going to be rough, and it wasn't going to be as easy as it might seem on YouTube or anything else like that. So
people like Cameron Haynes and shit.
Yeah, man. So I mean, I trained, but even then, he's been doing it since he was fucking young. So, for me, it was. How am I gonna train for that? And part of it was like I was already mentally prepared because that's just how I think. Again, I'm competitive, so like I get to a certain point where nothing can defeat me mentally. So I was like, man, no matter what the conditions. I actually went again in December for late season, and dude, we're sleeping in like the warmest it got at night was 7 degrees. That was a warm night.
Fuck.
And the average was like 4 degrees. The coldest being 3 degrees.
Guns or bow?
Bow hunting.
Okay.
Yeah. And then
Fuck, dude.
and then like we had to climb down into a canyon, and like at the top there wasn't that much snow because there was a bunch of winds, right? And the snow was really light, so it was kind of just blowing everywhere. But as we get down, dude, there was like at spots, like I would take a step and like I'd be hip deep in snow.
Damn.
And then you got gear on, you got your bow, and you're climbing through that, and then have to come back up. I mean, it took us 3.5 hours to go 3/4 of a mile, like as a crow flies, right? Because you have to it's just stuff like that. But mentally, like physically, like, man, I was spent.
But that's that resilient factor too, because like thinking about that's like I can't do that shit.
Yeah. And
But you did.
to not know if you're going to shoot anything,
Yeah.
like, to be unsuccessful, which I was. Well, to me, I don't see it as unsuccessful because I got out there for the experience, and like, I experienced a really, really tough time, something that I've never experienced before in my life. I thought September was tough, but like December was the roughest simply because of conditions. But I mean, it's just things like that I was able to come out on top and be like, man, like I cannot wait for next year. Whereas, man, like a lot of people might be like, man, like I'll probably never do that again. Yeah. And there's certain things that, and I'm not saying, that person's less or anything like that, because there's other things that I might experience in my life where I'm like, okay, I'll probably never do that shit again, just simply because I'm not engaged. But, it felt really good to especially to be out there with other people. And one of them was my clients, right? In December, he's a client of mine. He's really into hunting as well. I went out with him, and he was like, man, if I hadn't been training, he's like, there's no way I would have been able to make it through that. Like you would have had to climb to the top and drive into town, because we had no cell phone service. And he's like, man, you would have had to drive into town and like got somebody to come get me for sure. He was like, dude, like there's no way if I had not been training that I would have been able to make it through that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a brutal trip, dude.
Yeah, it is. But it's also, it's like, I know Travis did it, but like, dude, it's like the most beautiful, even if you don't even see an animal, bro. Yeah. In September, I didn't see a goddamn thing for 4 days or until the 5th day. But just what I saw, what I experienced from the state that I grew up in, and things that I haven't seen, I was like, man, this is worth it. I could go home today and be totally happy. Yeah. And so that's where the training comes in for me, is because, I got to spots that, like if I wasn't able to get to, it's like I would have never experienced that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's shit you can't ever replace, right? Man. Let's jump into questions before we wrap this up. We had a few from some OG listeners. First one being Karan Hawkins. How do you think the podcast industry has changed since you two started the podcast way back when?
I'll let you start because you've been a lot deeper into the podcast game.
I think that number one, it's obviously saturated. There's tons of people, and I don't mean that in a bad sense. There's just so much content being put out on the podcast world. I think that it's also more important because I think it's a bigger marketing tool, and it's a bigger source for people to, like, companies to actually use as like ad spend and stuff. So it's definitely become like a priority in business. But I also think along with that comes a drop in overall quality, because I think there's a lot of people, like, I'll listen to podcasts and I'm like, God, are you doing this on an iPhone headphone? Like, I gotta turn this shit off. Like, or they're interviewing somebody and they're typing on the keyboard. You can hear them typing, and it's just like, bro, like podcast etiquette, like be engaged in the conversation. So I think quality, like one of the things that has changed is like quality has to be high. Like I don't want to hear echoes in your voice. I don't want to hear like shit in the background. Like, and it doesn't take that much effort to make sure that doesn't happen. Right. Like we don't have like a big soundproofed bubble room with like crazy like mic blockers and stuff.
And we started in a garage.
Yeah. So at first you can't like completely control it.
Yeah.
But I think like as you evolve, you just need to step up quality.
Right.
So I think like what's changed, I think there's just more out there. I think with that comes like higher quality, but then also less quality in some realms. And I just think it's more relevant. I think podcasting in general is just a more relevant tool for business.
And I think when it gets saturated, you're going to have the quality plummet, right? Mm-hmm. Which leaves you room for opportunity to separate yourself from the rest of the herd, right? So, you know, how might you deliver more value, more quality to your listeners, even if it's only 10 listeners, 100 listeners, 1,000, whatever you got. You know, it allows you to grow on that platform. And it's another tool, you know, to grow your business, to position yourself, and to create content. So
I think it's funny, like when people are like, oh yeah, but like nobody listens to it. And I'm like, you got two people? Yeah. That's two people's life that you could be having a positive effect on.
Right.
Or that could become clients.
Yeah.
Like,
and it's practice for you.
Yeah.
You know?
100%.
Yeah. How to organize your thoughts, how to organize content.
Build confidence in what you're talking about. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. Marty Marr. Shit. Looking back when you guys moved, that was the beginning of his. Looking back, when you guys moved on from the Mind vs. Muscle podcast, are your careers and lives currently where you expected them to be at? And then a second one for Theo. What's good with your boy Pogba?
Oh, Pogba.
Pogba, go Blues. What's that?
Paul Pogba, he plays for Manchester United.
Oh, okay.
I'm not going to even talk about it. They're in 5th place right now, so we won't. That's all I'll say about that.
So looking back from then, are your careers and lives currently where you expected them to be at?
No, but in a good way,
in
a positive way. I did not expect to, you know, especially, you know, I just bought a house, and, you know, it's a place that, you know, my family can grow. And for me, I expected business to be a little bit different, but that's only because I didn't fully understand what it would be like to have that family dynamic.
Yeah.
Right. So I put a lot more emphasis or a lot higher expectation on my business than I did, you know, my family at that point, simply because of ignorance and just not knowing, you know, what the future might hold. So things changed, had to make different shifts, but that's not to say that, like, I'm not happy with where I'm at. I love what I do still. And that's going to continue, but I also took that time to, and right now I'm working on, and I won't say anything, but just working on a project for myself this year, that, I'm super excited about. I hired a accountability coach, actually, Andres. So I'm working with Andres. And you know, so he's kind of pushing me to do some things on the business end, and just, you know, I didn't expect really where my business has shifted as far as how I approach it. You know, like, I expected to be a lot more busy and you know, 8 hours a day and blah blah blah, for whatever reason I had that expectation, and now it's definitely more focused on the quality of what I'm doing, and how I approach each client, which I'm not perfect at all, but I would say that, you know, that's kind of been the change is you know, my expectations were way more ambitious. I shouldn't say way more ambitious, but they were way different in the fact that, you know, I thought that I would be in a different place in my own personal business. I thought that by now I would have my own gym, you know, from when we started the podcast. And, you know, now I'm still at Vigor, but because I made that choice to, not because, you know, I was like, oh man, like, you know, I got a family, I can't do it. That's not the reason at all. But
I think it's clarity.
yeah,
Right?
exactly.
I think, like, I could definitely say I didn't expect us both to have kids and a family and shit like that.
Yeah.
Like, if you would ask me that when we were recording in the garage, I wouldn't have been like, oh yeah, we'll have a family and blah blah. So that's definitely changed. I think that, you know, for me it's kind of weird because I think at that point in time I knew, but I didn't know. Like, I knew what I wanted, and this is what I wanted, but I don't think I understood what it meant to have it or to get there. I didn't really understand entrepreneurship. I didn't know when I was going to make a shift. I didn't know how early I was going to make a shift. Mm-hmm. So things have definitely changed, but like in a sense I knew because I've always had the same plan, you know. I just didn't, like you, I just didn't have clarity on what that actually looked like or what that meant. So I think things escalated differently in my mind. Because there's even times now that I'm just like, man, I feel like just yesterday, like I was just like every fucking day just training people, and I was with the crew, and like I was living in Renton, and it's just like now I'm like married, I have a daughter, I live down south, we have like a completely different business model. It's just crazy to see how fast things can shift. But at the same time, like I always knew eventually that was the plan. Like I always knew that I was going to go all online, I was going to have my own thing. I think like anybody who has like a dream or like a vision, it's really hard to truly understand like what it actually is like. That's why I always tell people, like, when you set goals, like try to really think about like who you need to become, because the person who has what you want is not the person you are right now. And that's okay. Don't feel bad about it, accept it, and like try to think of like who do I need to become to achieve that. So I think for me, I had to step up like really quick, because it was like, okay, if I'm going to do this, what am I doing right now that's not aligned with that person I want to be? And it was just a ton of stuff. And it was like my schedule, my habits, like my weekends, like there's just so many things I need to change and shift and learn. So, and I think like, I mean, having a daughter put a fire under my ass to be like, it's now or never. So,
I definitely woke up a little bit more as far as, and developed more clarity, especially on the business end, because, you know, I thought that I was definitely ignorant to the fact of all the behind the scenes stuff that has to happen in order for you to have this gym, right? So now, and for the last couple of years, that's been the meat and potatoes of what I've been studying, is not just opening a business and looking for a place and saying, hey, I want that one. This is the equipment that I want. Open the doors. Let's go. Right. There's a lot more shit that goes on behind it, especially if you want to scale it. Mm-hmm. Right. So that's been really what I've been focusing on more. So instead of taking a ready, fire, aim approach, that I can now be prepared and do it in the right way. And again, not everything is going to go smoothly, but at least, you know, you have systems in place to where you can make that transition a lot better.
It's your foundation, right?
Exactly.
Like, I mean, you look at a house, it's not going to last very long if your foundation is shit. Yeah. I think it's funny. I've said this to, I can't remember who I was saying this on the podcast, but in the CrossFit world, it's more popular, but there's some in like the functional training area too, where there's like companies that literally spend their time like basically programming for gyms. So your groups and your classes, your clients, you just buy the and to me, I'm like, this is so backwards. Like, how are you even owning a gym if you don't know how to program? Yeah. Like, that doesn't even make sense to me. Yeah. I can understand working for a company, and like the company owns the gym and the company does the programming. There's coaches that run the programming. But to think that like you're a gym owner or a company that's hiring somebody else to do programming on an affiliate level, that's just weird to me. Like,
so in regards to that, because I've had calls with people from all over the world of gym owners who have asked me, like, man, like, I have all this stuff, and it's kind of just what I was talking about. I got all these things to do behind the scenes. Like, this is how much time I'm spending on programming for these people. Yeah. So
it's more of a time thing.
It's more of outsourcing it. It's like, man, I trust you.
Oh, that makes a lot more sense.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. So, if they have the ability, I think that's totally fine.
Right.
And I would just say, like, too, like I mean, from a business perspective, I would get somebody on your team to take that role. Or you delegate your time better so you can continue to do it. Because there's been plenty of things along the way that I've had to stop doing in our business because I don't have the time to do it anymore. Right. But somebody else can fill that role for me and be within, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
and I saw that you talked about that in San Diego, right? Just like outsourcing,
100%.
what it is that you want to do and the things that you're good at.
And that's huge. And I think for people, like, you have to list those things out, and as your business grows, start outsourcing. Because there's a lot of people that are like, okay, hey, like, I'm still a broke trainer. I can't afford to do this. I'm like, that's fine. I couldn't either, but I knew as soon as I made enough to hire somebody to do this, that was the first thing off my list, because then it opened time for me to do what I do well, which is coach. Okay. I think it's Jessica, but it's JSKA. So Jessica. Free resources for students trying to learn more about fitness and nutrition, articles, infographics, courses, etc.
Can you repeat that?
Free resources for students trying to learn more about fitness and nutrition.
I was actually just going to talk about this too.
I mean, I'm not even going to get into books. There's just so many fucking books, but I personally believe that, like, I think you should get certified just for legal purposes, like go get a NASM cert or whatever. For nutrition, I really like Precision Nutrition, MNU, NCI. Like, those are really good quality certifications. But I actually think the most valuable thing you can do is, if you're a trainer or a nutritionist, like, hire a nutritionist or a trainer so you can experience what it's like to be coached. I think going to workshops, going to courses, going to things in person, which is hard for me to say which one to do because I don't know what's coming up. But I think those are the most, like, things I look back on, like, the most valuable things rarely were like, oh, I got this NASM certification. I have it, but the most valuable things were when I went to that 3-day seminar and I networked with people and I met the speakers and we did hands-on workshops and, like, I learned practically, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I think that's usually the most valuable thing to me.
So I would agree with that as far as free stuff, because everybody is handing out free shit these days.
I guess that wasn't free.
Including you. And it's not a bad thing, right? So a lot of people will say, like, oh, man, like, I hate when the first thing that pops up is this free ebook because I know that they're going to sell me something on the back end, blah, blah, blah. And, this whole funnel thing. It's not bad that you're being sold. It's bad if you're being conned into something, into a result, and that there's no value there, right? Being sold is a good thing. It's a positive thing, right? So with that being said, there is so many free ebooks out there.
Yeah.
My daily emails is ridiculous because I subscribe to people's newsletters and just got free ebooks on business, nutrition, training. It's free.
Yeah,
learn from it.
Yeah.
Take it in. Like, they've literally done so much education, PhDs, right? Even people who don't have degrees, who have done all of this studying for you, and they've put it into an ebook or a PDF or whatever it is. They're putting it out for free. Yeah. So sign up for the newsletter and get it. Read all the information, extract and put it into play. Yeah. Like, if you're talking about free stuff, that's a fucking solid way to learn, and that's how I learn a lot.
Me too. And I guess, like, everything I said is cost money because it's books and things like that. But
which
I would agree.
Which is important. I think that you should be doing certifications. You made valid points, but there's a lot of free information out there.
I mean, fuck, like this podcast. I mean, go to my website. We give away a free nutrition manual. It's like 80 pages. Yeah. And the funny thing is like, and this is how a lot of marketing works now, is like, I actually don't pitch you on anything. I just give you the free ebook and you're on my newsletter, and I'm just going to teach you stuff throughout the week. Yeah. And it's always just one of those things where it's like, if you need more help, you know what I do. Right. We fucking coach. Right. So just ask us. Right. Like, it's not like, buy this. Right. On sale this week only. Like, it's none of that shit. No, but I think that's a really good point. Just going out. And I think just, like, use this tool called Google. Yeah. Like, a lot of people are like, hey, can you tell me? And it's like, I literally spent years just Googling topics that I would be interested in and just looked for reliable sources or studies or whatever it may be. And then I would just read, right? And I would just learn, or I'd watch YouTube videos and shit like that, or find podcasts like this. Like, I think that's so important. Last question is from James Cross. Where do you guys see yourselves in the fitness industry in 5 years? That's a hard question. Part of me honestly, I think I'm going to be doing the same thing, just more of it. Like, but I think that goes back to, like, not having clarity years ago. Is like, just for me, it's like maybe having a little bit bigger of a team, so we can help more people. The quality of content will be higher and we'll be putting out more. Mm-hmm. But that's not limitless. You know what I mean? What am I going to put out a video, podcast, blog every single day of the week? Like, it's impossible. Right. So I think for me, it's just like quality of coaching, quality of my team, and quality of content is just going to be higher. So we're just going to be my real goal is honestly just to be a more reputable company in the industry, just like really put my foot down in the cement and just place it there. So in a decade, like I'm one of the OGs, like the people I look up to that I was reading books from, 8 years ago. And I think that just doesn't really come from anything different. I think it just comes from reps of doing what I'm doing right now. The only thing I think would change is like I might speak more because I love speaking at events, whether it's like a training seminar or it's a business convention, which it's funny. Like I had one this month, got canceled because of Corona, and I had one in June, canceled because of Corona. So may not be speaking for a little while, but point being is like in the future, I do see myself just doing more of that just because I like speaking on this stuff.
Yeah.
But no, I just think just continue doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. So for me, definitely have my own gym, and really focusing the next 5 years on that. And so like, I don't expect myself to be speaking a lot. Like I would definitely like to maybe like a couple times a year. Getting into that space, but like almost 100% of my time focused.
Yeah, focused on that. That's a busy time. Like when you start something big like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not even something that's crazy massive. I don't have this, if you haven't seen what Vigor Ground is now, it's a pretty massive facility. I think it's like 7,000 training square feet. Definitely don't need anything like that. It's a pretty amazing place. It's kind of like Disneyland for for coaches.
It's
but
fucking huge. Now this is 2,000 square feet.
Yeah,
there's a lot of space out there.
Right, there's a lot of space. So 7,000 is
huge.
Ridiculous. But and not to say that I'm not ambitious or anything like that, but my focus is more on again, opening and scaling and providing as much value as I possibly can to each person that comes through that door. And it starts now, so for me, that's really where I see myself in 5 years, is mastering the ability to be a small business owner in a physical location like that. And that's it. Maybe speaking a little bit. I really try to take as many experiences that are provided to me on a daily basis. I work with the team now because I'm kind of have like the most seniority on the team. Mm-hmm. People kind of just naturally come to me about training and just different questions and stuff like that. So, and I really love connecting with the team on stuff like that and helping to educate them. So, I'm really, really looking forward to having a team like that. And, I'd love to spend majority of my time, again, doing the back end stuff and making sure that runs smoothly. But man, like I really love coaching coaches.
Yeah.
And making sure that, they love what they do and hearing their goals and understanding them and helping them achieve those goals. So that's probably the most powerful thing for me for the next 5 years that I could be doing.
I'm excited, dude.
Yeah, me
excited,
too.
Dude. It's good having you back on the podcast.
Solid coming through here. This is a crazy place.
Yeah, man.
So
We'll wrap
done.
it up.
Proud
there.
of you.
Thank you, man.